All right. So, Andy Rosenberg, let's talk a little bit about you and what you do for fun. So, let's dive into that.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I probably not the most exciting of persons. For me, it's really my son and my two dogs. That's, my wife and my father. That's like the whole focal point of my life when I'm not working. And, spending time with you, going to a UFC fight, that kind of thing, that's quite a bit of entertainment for me. So I don't know. I'm probably not the most exciting guy in personal life.
Okay. So, I know you're obviously very family oriented, your father, your family, and, providing wealth. I know that you have a massive network as well. So, you're constantly active and connecting and networking as well. And then you're running the company. So, you are very busy. Do you ever get out to the beach? I know you don't really get out to the water that much. I think there's a lot of people that would probably be pretty envious to live where you live. Do you get out to the water much? And
Not as much lately, but I will be getting back into it. It's summertime. My son is out of school, so we'll have, more free time to be doing water activities. And it's easy to forget. You get so caught up in the grind, you can almost forget you live on a beautiful island. I used to joke when I spent more time in the downtown office, you spend, 40, 50, 60 hours a week, in a concrete structure, and, might as well have been in Wisconsin or Alaska or something, right? Because you spend all day, and it's dark when you leave the house and it's dark when you get home. But that's the price of trying to pay Hawaii prices. It's pretty expensive out here.
it is, but it is beautiful, man. That drive up the east side to the North Shore, there's nothing like it, man. Oahu is gorgeous. And I loved a lot of the islands, as you know, Maui. I have a place there. The Big Island is amazing. Have some real estate there. And then Kauai is an island that I love. Very difficult to get property there. But Oahu, man, because it took me a long time to get out to Hawaii. And we talked about this. I thought it was going to be I was kind of snobby when it comes to traveling. I've been to 45 countries, kind of, been to Fiji. And I was kind of like, Hawaii is going to be very sort of developed, and there's going to be McDonald's everywhere. And it's just not going to be as awesome as people make it. Boy, was I wrong. Once I went to Hawaii, I think that was probably 6 years ago. I was hooked ever since, and I love it. And I promise you, I'm going to get out there soon again. So to your point, yes, I think you kind of can forget that you live in one of the most beautiful places in the world. You're going to work every day, you're waking up, you're walking to a building or driving to your office, working all day with your people, deadlines to hit, people to manage, payroll to get out. And then you forget that, just a couple miles away from you is some of the most beautiful and pristine beaches in the world. So I'm going to remind you of that, Andy. I'm going to put that on my agenda.
All right, that's a good reminder. I could probably use it.
All right. So let's talk about maybe some opportunities, because this is a focus round.
All right.
Maybe one opportunity in your career, Andy, that ended up being a game changer for you. Something that this opportunity, looking back on your career, the time you spent as an investor and business owner and entrepreneur, this one thing out of all the things kind of that happened, I'm sure there's plenty of them, this is the one thing I would pick out as something that really was sort of impactful.
Oddly enough, for how much I didn't enjoy corporate, the 3 corporate years that I spent was very life-changing for me. And I was very, very, very fortunate because we're part of a management program where you got to move around the world in different areas of corporate finance. So I worked in a cost accounting in a factory in Georgia doing fiber optics.
Georgia, the state or the country?
The Atlanta, Georgia area.
Got
And
it.
then Amsterdam in the Netherlands. It was a little town just outside of Amsterdam, but to get to work in treasury in Europe for a year for the corporation, then back to New Jersey doing sales support work. Right at the 2000 tech bubble. So I got to a firsthand view of the tech destruction of 2000. And it was a multitude of things. Simply just getting that much experience crammed in a 3-year period and getting a master's degree through a company, fresh out of college at a time where, you're not married, you don't have children or pets. If you're going to be you're going to move 4 times in 3 years and internationally. That's the time to do it.
Absolutely.
And then, obviously having that thing where the roller coaster of here you are, you think you're this big shot, graduate summa cum laude, get this really, really cushy corporate job, traveling, internationally for the company. You think you're such a big shot. You got your stock options and your vestings and all this. And then bam, tech, bubble comes and goes. And a lot of us, my friends, were out of jobs. There was people selling sports cars back, moving back in with mom and dad. I mean, it was a wonderful experience of humility and growth, just crammed into a 3-year period. Not an easy time of my life, but definitely a good learning experience. Definitely a transformative experience.
I love that. Okay, communicating. You are a master networker. I would say that I made a joke. We were on a call a couple weeks ago and I said, you could tell Andy that you have a deal in Timbuktu and he'd be like, here, I have a contact for you. So you know a lot of people, and I have yet to meet someone that doesn't speak very highly of you, which obviously the more people you meet, the harder for that is to be accomplished. I'm sure there's probably 1 or 2 out there, but I have yet to meet them. And, so tell me a little bit about communicating, Andy, and networking and why that's such a big part of what you do. And maybe a tip or two for someone that, is new to sort of communicating or networking or trying to build new relationships and they feel like maybe they don't have anything to offer. And we'll get to skip the line hacks as well down the line, but I really want to kind of dive in this a little bit with you specifically because you are a connector of people and I think you're even more sort of experienced when it comes to this than even most.
Oh, okay. Yeah. It's kind of interesting. Angel Williams is a really good friend of mine, and I know she's been meaning to put out, I don't know if she has put it out since, but she'd been meaning to put out a book. I think she was going to entitle it Find Your Superpower or Embrace Your Superpower. I forget exactly what it was. And, her thing was that, it's good to learn a little bit of everything. Most people have, one thing that they really excel at. And for her, that was networking. She's phenomenal with people. I mean, you meet her, you like her right away. And her memory is unbelievable. I mean, you probably, Jonathan, if you met her, like a year later, she would ask you, how your kids are doing, and she'd probably remember all 3 of their names and what grades they're in. I mean, her memory is amazing. But her memory is amazing because it's genuine. She really does care. It's not just that her IQ is incredibly high and she's an incredibly intelligent woman, but she literally genuinely cares. Her husband is equally a very intelligent man with a PhD in, I think, some kind of like fluid dynamics stuff. I mean, this guy's really smart. He's an utter introvert, very sweet man, but God, the idea of like going to best ever conference and meeting 300 people just scares the willies out of him. He loves sitting behind,
not his jam.
But you put him behind an Excel spreadsheet and write macros and formulas, and he's loving it. And he tried to teach her underwriting. And she finally pulled him aside and said, listen, hubby, you can teach me the basics. You can teach me about, the assumptions and, why one model is better than another, or the dangers of using some guru's template. But that's not my superpower, and that's not where my time is best spent. And frankly, it makes me unhappy. She just is like, I really don't enjoy underwriting. Now, she's pitching it as, of course, you still need to understand the inputs, how the inputs are put in, why some inputs aren't better than others. So like her very, very close friend.
Yeah, you're saying, look, it's not that she doesn't understand how to play wide receiver if she's the quarterback. She knows how to run routes. She'd just rather be the quarterback, or vice versa. She'd rather be the wide receiver.
Yeah.
Doesn't mean that she counts what the quarterback's doing.
Yeah,
it's just not her. It's not her candy stick, as you would say.
Yeah, that's just not her thing. That's just not her thing. And
I've been following this coach. He used to coach Serena Williams. As you know, my kids are in tennis, and just been kind of getting up to speed with some of these things. And I saw a clip the other day, and he said basically, you win majors and tournaments by leaning into your strengths, not by making your weaknesses your strengths. And I thought that was very, profound. I'd never heard it quite put like that from someone who, he coached Serena Williams for 12 years, and I think they won, a bunch of majors together. But he basically said, look, if your forehand is your best attribute, lean into it. Like, you're going to win tournaments with your forehand, and learn how to essentially, you're going to have to hit backhands, but you want to keep the ball on your forehand side, and you want to make the player have to hit it to your forehand. So I completely understand that. But getting back to the question, so Angel, right? I've talked to her a couple times on LinkedIn. I don't know her personally. So she's a master communicator, and you picked that up from her, or that's something you guys just share in common?
Well, it was just a comment that, I mean, I thought of a lot because I really respect her. And then, Douglas Dowell and I were working on a lot of stuff together over time. And, I would say to him, geez, I don't think I have a superpower. I'm more of a dabbler. I like all the asset classes. I've more of a fill any role kind of personality, whatever the team needs. And he laughed and laughed, and he really teased the heck out of me and said, oh, you're such a schmuck. He said, you're a networker. That's what you're best at. You're best at meeting people and being genuine and building real, genuine friendships, and your memory is very good. More like Angel's in the sense that it's because you literally care. It's not because your memory is better than another person's. It's because you're really listening. You're not just waiting for the next piece of information. And it took me a while, and several other people had said the same thing. And I said, oh, okay, I guess I better lean into this. And that's when I'm happiest, frankly. And a lot of it is too, if somebody calls me up and tells me about a deal, and we often will help people just out of the, just to help people. I don't try to monetize every single deal flow. And I think we talk a lot about the abundance mindset, but I don't think most people really fully embrace it or understand it.
I 100% agree. And I think it's something that, I think you can be born with it. I also think that it's a learned thing. I think maybe there's some of both as well. But I also think it can be challenging at times, even if you live in that and operate in that mindset, because I think us as go-getters have a natural tendency to be like, okay, I want this deal. But I think over time you realize, I can't do all these deals. And even if I can work on getting enough deal flow, Andy, to where I'm not concerned about hitting every home run. If I get enough pitches, I know I'm going to get another at bat. And I think that's the abundance mindset. Like, good shooters, they say, are always focused on the next shot. They're not worried that they missed the last shot. They're already thinking about the next shot. Steph Curry's always like, yeah, I'm thinking about the next shot. I have to keep shooting. And so if I reverse that in my mind, if I am focused on deal flow and I'm always getting more deal flow, it's easier for me to pass off another deal to someone that maybe fits their buy box better or what they're looking for, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah, that's how I feel. You learn over time. There are the people that, they just take and run and you never hear from them again. And I just look at it as, all right, cool. That's your one time. And
you have that bird in your hand. So I hope it lasts you a long time.
Yeah, it's like, all right, cool. You're a transactional person. And I was just speaking with William Robinson, a mutual friend of ours, about this. He was a little bit frustrated about a gentleman who kind of exhibited the wrong behavior. And, I was referencing A Bronx Tale, the story where the young man is really upset chasing after a guy who owes him $50. I think the character's name is Joey Dumps or something. He's really upset with this Joey Dumps. He owes him $50 and he's dodging him. And the gangster that is his mentor, the older gentleman, Chaz Palminteri's character, says, well, what are you getting so angry for? You should be thrilled. For $50, you got this guy out of your life. You'll probably never have to deal with him again. And when I explained that to William, he's like, oh, okay, I see your point. I said, what are you going to do? You're going to let your bitterness about one bad scarcity mindset person distract you from the abundance lifestyle and waste any of your time where you could be helping other people, and it will be, be reciprocated, to you, 2 or 3-fold. And he just laughed. He's like, okay, cool, I'm over it. Cool.
I love it so much. I mean, it's just spot on. You could waste your time being upset. You could waste your time with bitterness. You could waste your time, creating a mindset of PTSD or protect, preserve, and all that stuff. I think some of that stuff is needed. Obviously, we need asset managers. Obviously, we have to, we need someone to count the beans. But at the same time, it's like, yeah, not everyone's going to be a winner. Not every deal is going to be a winner. You got to keep moving forward.
Yeah, I mean, it's a constant theme that I write about, and Yeah, you've seen him, John. In between us, I get the occasional hateful DM, or I would call it peculiar comment.
I wouldn't say hateful. I would say more. You touched a button that they didn't like touch.
Yeah, I have a bad habit of this.
Came down the line. You came down the line. I love it. Yeah, there's a couple people online, and I'm not going to mention names, but you are among them that I just enjoy the truthfulness, man.
Yeah, and I mean, the funniest thing is, I've had someone ask me on a DM, and I respected that at least they did it, had the class to do it in a DM. But, they were saying, like, are you doing this for clicks? And I was like, man, you have no idea how much I edited down to be kinder. It's like, and
and even if you are, like, if you're doing it for engagement, so what?
No,
it's your platform.
But I'm really not. I mean, that's the funny thing.
You are able to.
If I wanted to be more hyperbolic and more of a personality and be, disingenuous to who I am as a person, sure. I mean, I'd hire somebody to write some stuff. I mean, I can have a VA write inappropriate comments about either Biden or Trump or somebody. I mean, if I really wanted to be controversial, I mean, I'm a little bit arrogant, but I think I could do a better job. I'm like, this is me. This is how I think. And I often tell people, if it really bothers you that much, by all means, unfollow or block me. I'm not that desperate for one more click. By the same token, I love it when people argue with me rationally and thoughtfully. I mean, it's wonderful. I mean, I'm not.
Yeah, I mean, you and we obviously engage on each other's content daily, and we don't agree on everything. I would say you and I would say the high 90s, we agree on a lot of things. But there are times when we don't agree and see everything perfectly eye to eye, and that's okay. We talked about this the other day. It's the ability, or I think one thing we're missing in this country is the ability to have open dialogue and disagree with one another respectfully, but still respect that other person's viewpoint and their right to have that viewpoint. But it doesn't need to be, I don't like you or you don't like me, and now we can't be friends. We can never drink a beer together or tell a joke because you think someone else should be in the White House or you don't like a policy that I like, et cetera, et cetera. I think that there's just too much of that. And candidly, Andy, I do think some of that's overplayed too. I think the country's actually a little bit more purple than we realize. I think there are people on both sides that maybe are a little bit louder. But let's not stray too far into politics.
I'll give you a good example. Like, I always say that I'm asset class agnostic, but I've never been a huge fan of cryptos. I'm not the most tech oriented, and I'm a very conservative, guy. I'm old for my age. It's just not really my thing. Cold wallets, hard wallets, zeros and ones. It just all seems a little bizarre to me. And three different gentlemen that I really respect, three of the highest net worth gentlemen that I know, frankly, three of the absolute smartest guys I know, all kind of ripped me a new one, very politely, but ripped me a new one about my shortcomings about crypto. And one was Jerry Parker. He's a multi-billionaire, one of the most famous traders in the world and amongst the trading community. I had interviewed him. Thank God, I had some friends that pulled some big strings to get such a famous gentleman. One of my favorite all-time books is a book series called The Market Wizards. And it's where they interview literally the world's best traders. He's in that book to give you an idea of just how smart this guy is and how successful. And he was like, Andy, what is your holdup with crypto? He's like, if I told you could invest with me tomorrow, would you? And I was like, yeah. And he's like, we own over 400 different commodities. He's got oil, he's got hogs, cocoa, wheat, interest rate swaps, individual stocks, indexes.
You say hogs, like as in like animals?
No, like the futures contract, like on, like hogs or like chicken futures, the things you can publicly trade on a commodity exchange. So,
Got it.
And he said,
I'm not familiar with.
Yeah, but just imagine anything you buy can be, copper, gold, it's all traded on an exchange, right? And he's like, Andy, it's just another pricing point. It's now liquid enough, and it has a different correlation amongst different asset classes. It fits within our model. And I was like, okay, wow. I mean, he was very nice about it, but boy, that was a intellectual smackdown on my part. And then it gets worse. Then I meet Tom Basso. And Tom Basso, at a personal level, is the antithesis of Jerry. He's more of a retire early, I'm not interested in being a billionaire. He could have been. He loves what he does. They call him the all-weather trader. He just had a book out by that very name. And he trades 30 to 40 positions just because he's retired. He doesn't have the pain, it's too much of a pain in the ass to be trading 300, 400 different, commodities or positions. And he said the same thing to me.
For these commodities that you're saying, these hawks, I want to understand a little more. Is it basically like the QQQ or something? Like, is it like an ETF that's based around?
Yeah, just imagine an options contract to buy something. It's just the financialization of an asset. And there's the thing called the mini futures. And the mini futures are like a tenth of a contract. So it's more accessible to smaller people. And there's actual tax advantages to trading the mini futures contract. So, Tom's explaining all this, very nicely to me. But, he's kind of had that look on his face like, you schmuck, well, what is your problem with crypto? And he says the same thing Jerry's saying. Andy, it's just another pricing point. It's liquid enough. It has different correlations. And, flat out, he doesn't take on new investors and says, hey, if I told you I would be willing to manage your money, would you give it to me? And of course, before he can finish the sentence, I'm saying yes. I mean, I think the man averages, I forget, but it's pretty ridiculous. I remember his career. He had one losing year in like decades of work or something. And the guy he's a statistical anomaly. He is in the 0.001% of the best traders in the world. And he trades Bitcoin and Ethereum, just like Jerry. So now it really looks stupid, right? Particularly after saying I'm asset class agnostic, but then saying I have a problem with crypto. And then a third gentleman, who's a really good friend of mine, tells me that he'd been working on a deal. And I said, oh, what is it about? And he said, oh, there's a Native American tribe. They've got acres of solar panels. They got tons of excess electricity. They want to partner up with people, bring in a data center or bring in a crypto mine, build up the facility, get a lot of their tribe hired, and everybody gets paid. And again, he said, Andy, what is your holdup with crypto? And I said, all right, you know what? If 3 of the wealthiest, most successful, highest IQ people I know are going to beat me up about crypto, I'm going to get over my, fears of crypto,
And have you invested in crypto since?
No.
I haven't.
But, like in a portfolio that has crypto as one of the subclasses, and in the specific where it's a trader that I'm comfortable working with, it would be something I would do. So that's why I'm always very specific about, it's nice when we talk about the macro picture, but you really got to focus on the micro because all things are not created equal on the micro. And the transition for us, it's a conversation we have all the time, and we have a mutual friend, we tease about it. And I think I've teased her too much about it, so I don't tease her anymore. But when somebody says to me, I don't invest in California, and that just drives me crazy. And you'll find no bigger critic of California than me. I'm not a fan of...
Yeah, let's talk about that. And not to mention any names, something that hit me last night, I was hanging out with the kids, just, getting some downtime, and Ronald Reagan's from California. Man, because we play a game at the house sometimes. We call it the animal game, or it's the country game. It's basically like you have an animal or a country in your mind, and then you give clues and hints to the other people. And the more clues and hints you can give that are relevant, but they can't guess what it is, then you're doing a good job. Then the better you do, the harder it is, the more clues you have to give, then the higher your score. And then once the other person who guessed it, it's their turn. And so we were playing a game, we're actually doing states, and we were talking about one of my daughters, Abigail, was like, this is a really good president. And I thought of California and Ronald Reagan. I digress, but I just want to throw that out there.
I love that you're teaching your children how to think and have critical thinking and, be imaginative and creative. That's sorely needed right now.
She was actually referring to Ron DeSantis, incidentally, and I had to explain to her the difference between the governor and the president, but that was that about California. So between you and I, Andy, and everyone else that's going to watch or listen to this, there are pros and cons to everything in life. You and I both know that as investors. California has some serious problems, and for being a little bit diplomatic here, they have areas that they can improve on. Obviously, there are certain political issues that are not necessarily the best for investors. We have an issue when it comes to taxation and some other things that I don't really want to dive into. But I think as a state, in regard to GDP, how much money our state makes, in regard to our population. And, one thing I would say about California is it's absolutely beautiful. I mean, it's a very, very large place, 40 million people, and it's one of the most beautiful places in the world overall. And I'm from here, so I'm always probably going to be a little bit biased, but I have done quite a bit of traveling, lived in Europe, been to 45 countries and counting. And San Diego is still my favorite city in the world. And I just had a taco this morning on the way here, actually, and I was eating it. I was like, I'm probably going to send a picture of this to Andy. I do talk about the tacos in San Diego, but I will say this, it's a real thing, man. Food is a real thing. When you go places, you want to try the food.
That's what you remember too, oddly enough. We wait
100%. You want to try the food, man. And we have some of the best Mexican food, if not the best Mexican food in the world. And I do extract in my mind Andy San Diego away from the rest of California.
Oh.
We have a very, very large military community here. The SEALs are here. We have a lot of conservative types of people that are coming into this place. And we also have a lot of very left-wing people here too. But I think generally speaking, San Diego is very purple. And we're really sort of like Hawaii, where Hawaii is a very blue state, right? Obviously, one of the most blue states. But people in Hawaii are not really that concerned about your politics.
Yeah.
Like, they're more concerned about the way you treat people. And if you're cool, you're chill, you're not there to exploit them, right? They want to have family interactions. They want to have good times. And they're not really that concerned about where you are on the political spectrum. They're more concerned about you as a human. And I feel like San Diego has a lot of those same characteristics specifically. And there are certain other pockets of California as well. And I think for me, that speaks to me because I'm the same way. Like, I think, again, people should have their own opinions. They're entitled to those. People fought and died for that in this country, for people to be able to choose and vote. And candidly, the political parties have to keep each other at bay because it can go bad on a lot of different ways if there's not someone else that's there to challenge your thoughts and make you think deeper and, keep us all sort of accountable. We talk about mentors, we talk about what you just talked about as far as, other people that have kind of walked down that trail, that challenging why you, Andy Rosenberg, who's a very, very sophisticated investor, very experienced investor, why you are so opposed to crypto, right? That conversation challenged a thought process that you had, and it made you think, right? If everyone just agreed all the time, I don't necessarily think that would be the best way for our country to exist. So that will be my layout on my thoughts on California and San Diego specifically. Now, I want to kind of dive into what you were getting to as far as investing in the state and kind of how you see it comparatively.
Yeah, as you're alluding to, don't quote me on this. I believe it's now the 7th largest economy in the world. If, just in terms of look at a map, it's bigger than much of Western European countries. It's a massive state. So to paint a brush across an entire state of that size as, I don't like investing there is absurd. To compare San Francisco and San Diego, one's in the north, one's in the south, very different cultures, very different jurisdictions. And specific to San Diego versus LA, both in the south. Your zoning and permitting that you use for the ADU pals, we won't get into it too far. It's wildly different. As far as I know, San Diego has the most liberal, fast, and flexible zoning and permitting laws of anywhere in the United States. Am I correct?
I don't know if anywhere in the United States. I think there's still some places out there where you can just write on the back of a napkin, Andy, and go in and they say, go build it.
I don't think they would have the same rent comps or ability to get appraised to get a loan.
Probably don't. It's probably going to be you living there for sure if you go build it. But yes, you're right. I think San Diego has very, very aggressive pro-development laws, and they are continually trying to work on their process to make it even faster, as opposed to creating more red tape, to your point.
So like when I was mentioning you to somebody, they said, well, I don't invest in California. And I just walked them through the thought experiment. I don't care. I don't get a sale. Jonathan does not send me a commission, guys, if someone invests with him because I referred them to Jonathan, and I walked them through this thought experiment. And then the next thing was, well, I'm terrified of rent control. And I said, okay, but that's lovely, but Jonathan doesn't own and operate. He's a developer. Oh, okay. Then it was, well, I'm terrified of development. And I'm thinking, okay, you own a lot of value add properties, right? Yeah. How many of your value add properties aren't paying distributions right now because of a flood, a water main break, a roof repair, or interest rates went up too high and you were on variable debt? If people are being honest and we have a large room, you're going to see a lot of hands go up, right? And I'm telling you, when Jonathan's developing it, he actually knows what pipe is being laid. He knows it's laid correctly because he's the one laying the pipe. And not all developers are created equal. I explained to him, Jonathan's done this for a while. He also, owns and operates and has been very successful and is successful in, solar roofing. He knows construction, knows permitting very well, how to work with contractors. The number one thing that, we always talk about location, but I also talk about the team. You could give me two different opportunities. And one is, it's a ho-hum city and it's an asset class. But if it's the best guys that do it, I'll do that every day and twice on Sunday over some hot city in the new hottest asset class with a mediocre team. A mediocre team can still screw up the best city with the best asset class. The single most important thing is the team.
We agree. I think the team is so important. I think the operator, if you want to call it that, is important. Whoever is putting the deal together and executing on the deal. And the more time I spend in this business, Andy, the more, and I don't want people to take this the wrong way, but I do feel like our team is very strong. I feel like our team is experienced, and even more important than that, like, we understand the opportunity that we have here, and we are niched in.
And you live there.
And I think, we live here as well. So being niched in, I think, gives us a competitive advantage because we can continue to recruit, build already deep relationships that we've had here that we built over many, many years, and continue to grow into that core. And then it's really easy for me, now to say no in my career, Andy. And I was talking about this the other day, right? It's like, oh, look at this shiny thing. Oh, look at that shiny thing. Oh, look at this shiny thing. And I think you have to earn that, right? I mean, that's the way I'm looking at it or approaching it now in my career. I'm 42. I feel like you have to get to a place to where you have enough in assets, you have enough on your balance sheet that you have earned the right to say, I'm going to go buy a mine in Colombia because I want to, or because some guy I talked to is a friend of mine. We've been trying to do a deal for 10 years. He came to me and he wants to go, he wants to invest in a helicopter company in Alaska or something like that. I feel like you earn that right. And right now is not the time for me.
You're also in the growth phase of your startup business, and this is the time to be fully dialed in and niched in. As you allude to, there's stages.
We are putting the hours in, and we're seeing growth though, man, and it's happening quickly. It's happening a lot quicker than it did in my first startup business. I think the experience of knowing where not to invest your time and then where to double down on your time, there's nothing like that because it compounds quicker. Nothing that's of value I think you can get overnight. It's going to take work regardless, but knowing where to invest your time. It's kind of like having a kid, right? It's like knowing where to super lean in with your children. And then on the disciplinary side too, right? It's like, hey, that thing is not that big of a thing. I'm going to let that slide and be real chill and kind of just, light tap on the wrist. But this other thing over here, we're going to have to sit down and talk about this thing. So I think that comes with experience, in business. And I obviously have a lot to learn and learning every day, but I think we are seeing quicker growth than we did in my previous company. Okay, Andy, let's talk about a couple other things here that I put on this paperwork that you took the time to fill out. So you just mentioned something. Your favorite real estate quote is?
I believe it was location, 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 right?
Okay. It is. You put location, location, location. It's basically real estate 101. If you buy an asset and it's in a really awesome location, it's really hard to lose money on that asset over time.
And it sounds very simple and obvious, but and I'll try to keep this quick because we're coming close to our time. But it implies knowing the difference between a hot city and which neighborhoods in the city. And even within the neighborhood, what's the favorable part of the neighborhood? And It involves like, you don't just read a couple of news articles and say, okay, I'm going to invest in, I don't know, name a hot city now, Austin. You have to put in the grind of checking all these MLS listings, calling up property managers and asking them questions. And, like when I was looking at buying an investment property in Colorado Springs, I spent a lot of times learning all the different neighborhoods and, which ones are, more likely to have renters than others. And, after you follow it every day for months at a time, you start realizing, oh, okay, I always had a bias. I thought 3.2 was the starter home. In Colorado Springs, the preferred preferred home is the 4.3. And then it was the same thing. Every time the properties that were lingering, 180 days, 300 days, these bargain properties were always the 5 bedrooms. So you know exactly what I did. Of course, I bought 4.3s. But when I had first called a couple property managers and they said, hey, what are you looking for? I had said 3.2s and a couple said, oh, all right. And then they gave me some info. Finally, one of them said, geez, it's not really a 3.2 market. The best rental is the 4.3, and that's the big demand. And I'm thinking, geez, I wish someone had told me this sooner.
Property managers out there, when you do get those calls, tell the truth. And look, you may not even get that sale because some other guy may say something that sounds sweeter and that person may buy. But over time, your reputation you'll start to build a brand around telling the truth and helping people. And one guy like Andy Rosenberg singing your praises in a 5-star review could potentially send you enough business to keep you busy forever. So by creating that value, and it's the right thing to do. The market, the investor doesn't. Tell them the truth and try to add value to that person's life. And over time, it will come back to you. Mark my words. That's another part of the abundance mentality. Okay, so as an investor, knowing not only the location, meaning the broader market, but the cross street.
Oh yeah, really dialing
what's being developed in the city, right? What new is coming in? Is there a baseball stadium? All these land lift opportunities, et cetera, et cetera.
It's funny you say that because I work with an investor and I had sent him an email. It just said, geez, I don't know if you'd be interested in it. This part of town is, as I had understood it for, over the decades, it's kind of ghetto. And he laughed and said, Andy, that's where they're building a new baseball stadium. The city is dumping unbelievable amounts of money into projects in the city. There's going to be major gentrification. I'm glad you sent me the file. And I'm thinking, geez, it's a good thing I did not send it, just thinking, he won't like it because, it's the hood. And it goes to show you, it's like, he lives in that city. He knows that city. I don't live in that city, and it's not particularly one of interest to me, But again, that's why location. I mean, you could probably say the word location maybe 20 more times because exponentially it's so important to know the very neighborhood specifics of a market.
I agree, and I honestly, again, I think that was learned for me because as a go-getter, there were some hot spots, right? There was a time when you couldn't miss in South Carolina and you couldn't miss in Austin, you couldn't miss in Boise, Idaho, and Charlotte and all these places. I don't know necessarily. I think you have even more of a closer beat on some of the stuff that's going out, that's happening right now in the multifamily markets. But I think that now, as I've grown, I just am more focused on the areas that I know or the relationships of people that I trust that really know that market. I think that's really important too. Having really strong relationships with people that tell you the truth, that know what they're talking about, that are there, seeing this stuff on a daily basis. I want to get information about Tesla from Elon Musk, or as close as I can to Elon Musk. Not a guy who just bought a Tesla yesterday because he thought it looked cool. Like, I don't really, no offense, but, give it some time and have you done your research? Yeah. All right. So let's talk about a couple other things. Let's talk about risk. So let's talk about focusing on demand and not considering supply. There's obviously a lot of push as investors for the demand side. And you and I actually had a conversation, I don't know if you remember this, a while back. And you, one who told me, it was probably 7 or 8 months ago, and it's something I really took to heart. You said the more sophisticated investors are always looking at the supply side more. And I had never actually heard anyone dive into it that profoundly. So can you break that down a little bit, the difference between focusing all your attention or how you break down the amount of attention you're focusing on the demand side versus the supply side?
Yeah, it was actually Rick Rule, who's a very famous natural resources investor.